Good morning, class. Today's topic is acute kidney injury. We'll start with the nephrology section, and let's start with the topic. So, acute kidney injury is abrupt reduction in kidney function, which is evidenced by change in laboratory values. So basically, acute kidney injury is where there is an alteration of serum creatinine, there is a decrease in urine output, increase in blood urea nitrogen, and serum creatinine, other markers of acute kidney injury. And basically, because there is a disruption in the proper functioning of the kidney, and that is evident by the collection of or the rise in the serum concentration of creatinine and blood urea nitrogen, or even by the decrease in urine output. This is a very rampant situation. Acute kidney is very common in clinical setting and in institutional settings, and if to go by definition or the criteria, it has to be there is a increase in serum creatinine of at least 0.3 milligram per deciliter within 48 hours, or 50% increase in the baseline serum creatinine within 7 days, or there is a decrease in urine output of less than 0.5 ml per kg per hour for at least 6 hours. So this is a roundabout definition of AKI. Epidemiology wise, this is a very common problem in hospitalized patients. Almost 5 to 7% of all the hospitalized patients, ICU and non-ICU, they invariably suffer from AKI, and most of them have a reversible AKI, and they recover from the acute. Most of them they recover from the acute kidney injury, and a part of them might relapse into chronic kidney disease or chronic structural problems. So usually, especially in the critically ill patient in ICU, they are more prone for AKI, and that is what they call ICU acquired AKI, and their mortality is very high because they are the patients who are already suffering from multi-organ damage or multi-organ dysfunction. So their mortality can rise up to 50%. So epidemiology wise, if you're looking at the community acquired, it's a little less common. More common in a hospital setup or in an ICU setup is very common situation in ICU patients, where invariably most of the patients who are in multi-organ dysfunction or any other hypertension or sepsis related problem, they invariably have this acute kidney injury as a part and parcel of their disease. So usually it forms a part of a multiple patient in the hospital AKI and ICU AKI. They are usually suffering from the multiple problems, and this is one of a part of those multitudes of problems they are suffering from. And mortality wise also, the ICU acquired AKI are very high, and for a community acquired AKI, the most common cause can be usually diabetes and chronic comorbid conditions, or hypertension, elderly and male gender, and even patients suffering from UTI or the dehydration as a part of acute gastroenteritis or post gastroenteritis, or most commonly drug induced. And for the hospital acquired, there can be several of the dreaded diseases and dreaded complications, like you can have volume depletion, hypertension, septic shock, or cardiogenic shock, or nephrotoxic drugs used in the hospital acquired setup, or use of radio contrast dyes in those setups. But it can be ICU acquired AKI, which multitudes of other comorbid conditions, especially in patients suffering from multi-organ dysfunction or low cardiac output, or major surgery done, or even post-surgical is one of the very common cause because of the lack of proper fluid resuscitation. So classification wise, AKI has been classified. There has been various institutional classification, or even there has been international bodies who have tried to classify AKI, because making a diagnosis of AKI is very perplexing in a clinical scenario when you start into active practice, and you will come to know that it's not very easy to classify a patient into an AKI. So the criteria which has been put up, this one of them is the RIFLE, which R stands for risk, I for injury, F for failure, L for loss of kidney function, and E for end-stage renal disease. Very important thing to stress on this. Now we are calling it acute kidney injury, not the acute kidney failure, as we used to think, or that was a traditional classification, or the traditional nomenclature. Now, because acute renal failure is the scenario we call it when you have very increase in serum creatinine, or a very substantial decrease in the urine output, and when the kidney is very prone for going into the end-stage renal disease. So that is a state where you have acute renal failure nomenclature being put up. Unlike when we traditional classification, where the acute kidney failure was being used for all kind of acute kidney injury. Then the other classification is the AKIN classification, which is acute kidney injury network. Then KidneyCo classification, which is a kidney disease improving global outcome classification. So more or less is the classification is very similar. When you have RIFLE, where you have the risk, where GFR criteria, which is a glomerular filtration rate. The glomerular filtration rate is the velocity of the solute which traverses across the glomerulus in the kidneys. So when the serum creatinine is more than 1.5 of the baseline, or GFR is more than 25% reduction, that is a risk criteria for under the RIFLE, with the urine output 0.5 ml per kg per hour over a period of 6 hours. And we can definitely say that the kidney has been injured when the creatinine is greater than 2 into baseline, whatever the baseline value of the serum creatinine is, and when the glomerular filtration rate has reduced to less than 50, greater than 50%, and the output is 0.5 ml per kg per hour for 12 hours. So that it shows that indirectly it shows that the kidney has been injured. There has been ischemic damage to the kidney, or tubular damage to the kidney, or interstitial damage to the kidney in some proportion, but the hard fact is that the damage has been done. And the failure is the condition where the serum creatinine value is more than 3 times the baseline serum creatinine value, and the GFR is greater than 75% reduction, or the absolute serum creatinine is more than 4 milligram per deciliter, and the output is 0.3 ml per kg per hour over 24 hours, or complete anuria. Anuria is less than 12 hours, less than 100 ml urine for 12 hours. So this is a situation where the patient is going in for acute renal failure. Then the loss is when the acute renal failure is persistent, and it hasn't recovered well, the patient hasn't recovered well, and there is a complete loss of function for more than 4 weeks. And when the condition prevails for more than 3 months, then it is called end-stage renal disease. So the AKI criteria is, again, you have creatinine more than 0.3 milligram per deciliter. It's been put into stages 1, 2 and 3. The stage 1 is when the serum creatinine is more than, absolute creatinine is more than 1.5 or less than 2, not the absolute, but the serum creatinine value is around 1.5 to 2 of the baseline, or there is increase in serum creatinine by 0.3 milligram per deciliter, or the output is less than 0.5 ml per kg per hour for 6 hours. The stage 2 is where the serum creatinine is 2 to 3 times the baseline, and the output is less than 0.5 ml per kg per hour for 12 hours. And for the third stage, is either the absolute value is more than 4, or the serum creatinine value is 3 into the baseline serum creatinine, and the output is 0.3 ml per kg per hour for 24 hours, or anywhere for 12 hours, or there is a need for renal replacement therapy that has been put into stage 3. So this has been more simplified by this criteria. Then you have KDIGO classification, where again almost the stage 3 is something really, similar to AKIN classification, where the creatinine is 1.5 to 1.9 times the baseline. It's just stage 1, or the increase in serum creatinine is 0.3 milligram per deciliter within 48 hours, or there is a urine output as less than 0.5 ml per kg per hour for 6-12 hours, or the stage 2 is where the serum creatinine is 2.9 into the baseline serum creatinine value, or the output is 0.5 ml per kg per hour for 12 hours, or either the third stage is where serum creatinine is greater than 3 of the baseline value of the serum creatinine, or the absolute creatinine is 4 milligram per deciliter, or there is an initiation of dialysis. And the urine output criteria is when you have 0.3 ml per kg per hour for more than 24 hours, or anuria for more than 12 hours. So AKI, as we can see, the acute kidney injury is very common. We have seen it so rampant in the clinical and institutional settings. The most common cause is pre-renal. Pre-renal, as the word suggests, it has something to do not with the kidney, but something outside the kidney, and that is 55% of the cause is pre-renal, and it leads to decrease in GFR, that is the decrease in blood flow to the kidney, and that the causes we'll see in the next few slides. The intrinsic is the renal cause, which is again 40%, and very importantly the pre-renal and the intrinsic, they can overlap, especially in the tubular damage to the kidney that could be due to the ischemia related to the blood deficiency, as what happens in the pre-renal causes. So intrinsic, we have intrinsic is a renal pathology, where you have the, as we know, the kidney is made up of the glomeruli, or the interstitium, or the tubules, and the vessels. So all these 4 could be the reason for renal kidney injury, and the most common is tubular in the intrinsic types, and the post-renal is basically the as the ureter comes out of the kidney and goes to the bladder and then comes out to the urethra. So any 3 of these structure post kidney can lead to post-renal acute kidney injury. So pre-renal, basically you have decrease in cardiac output, or hypovolemia because of the GIT loss, or because of the sepsis, or there is a decreased effective circulating volume of blood, as it happens in the congestive heart failure or the liver failure, or because of the impaired renal autoregulation, as happens in the NSAIDs or AC or ARB inhibitors, as we'll see in the next few slides. So these all will lead to decrease in the renal perfusion or renal blood flow, and that will lead to acute kidney injury. And the intrinsic glomerular will be acute glomerulonephritis, and tubules and ischemia interstitial can be due to drug induced, very common, all those nephrotoxins, aminoglycosides, amphotericin B, rhabdomyolysis. These are the endogenous cause of the hemolysis. It happens in the PNH or rhabdomyolysis, where you will be lost muscle loss, or which happens in the crush injuries and all, or because of the intratubular crystals as found in the tumor in malignancy, where you have deposition of the urate crystals, or something in myeloma, where you have light chain deposits in the tubules. And you can have sepsis and infection and can have ischemia. Then the vascular causes can be due to vasculitis or malignant hypertension or thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, HUS. And the postrenal, as I talked about, can be bladder outlet obstruction or vesicourethral valve or any obstruction or any unilateral obstruction of the circulatory function kidney. So pre-renal is basically due to the intravascular volume depletion, and that can happen in the hemorrhage, can happen in the even in the renal fluid loss or GIT fluid loss, or third space losses, as happens in the burns, traumatized tissues, peritonitis or pancreatitis, and even when there is a decreased arterial blood, or because of the arterial underfilling, which happens as due to the reduced cardiac output in cardiogenic shock or congestive heart failure or pericardial effusions or massive pulmonary embolism or peripheral vasodilation due to gram-negative sepsis or certain hypertensive antihypertensive medications, or because in the anaphylaxis shock or cirrhosis and even other liver diseases. So change in the internal hemodynamic can be one of the other cause, where you will have NSAID induced glomerular afferent arterial vasoconstriction or due to prostaglandin inhibition, or it can be glomerular efferent arterial vasodilation, and that is due to AC inhibitors or ARBs. So these are the basic cause for the prerenal causes, and this is the diagram which will definitely going to simplify how the prerenal mechanism of kidney injury takes place. This is the afferent arteriole, and this is the efferent arterioles, this is the glomeruli, and this is the tubules, and we're talking about a normal structure of the glomeruli and with the blood supplies, and this there is a normal GFR in at stage in this stage A, and when you see the diagram B, you will see there is a decrease when due to any reason or any insult, if there is a decreased perfusion pressure, the typical response of the kidney will be there will be increased vasodilation of the afferent arteriole because of the release of the prostaglandins, and subsequently there will be increased angiotensin II secretion as the RAS pathway is active, and there will be constriction of the efferent arteriole. So you can see there is a dilation of the efferent arteriole and constriction of the efferent. So the whole exercise is to make more perfusion through the glomeruli. So there will be more blood flow and more blood flow through the glomeruli, so that the normal GFR is maintained. What happens in presence of NSAIDs? NSAIDs inhibits prostaglandins, so there will be decreased vasodilation, so there will be decreased blood flow, and that will lead to decreased low GFR. And what happens in AC inhibitors in ARBs, it will diminish the angiotensin II or RAS pathway. So what will happen, as there is the there is a decreased efferent arteriole pressure, there again will lead to low GFR. I hope you understand this whole background. And causes of renal AKI or intrinsic AKI, you have a tubular cause related to the tubules. Vascular cause can be large vessels or small vessels. Cause may be due to the glomeruli, or the cause can be in the interstitium. So acute tubular necrosis is another one of the very common reason for the acute kidney injury, and the renal ischemia forms 50% of the causes, and this is where you have this shock, hemorrhage, and sepsis, pancreatitis, post-vascular hemorrhage. So it is as analogous to pre-renal failure, where you have ischemia, and that's related to endothelial dysfunction and hyperemic reaction and insult to the kidney, and leading to acute tubular necrosis, that the tubule cells fails to function, and then there you have endogenous toxin and nephrotoxins. You have endogenous toxins, and those are like when you have myoglobin due to rhabdomyolysis, or hemoglobin as happens in the acute falciparum malaria, or incompatible blood transfusion, or uric acid crystals which gets deposited in the tubules, and then lead to tubular deposition and dysfunction, dis- and that will lead to the damage to the tubules. And the antibiotic nephrotoxic drugs, you have certain antibiotics, especially the aminoglycosides, foscarnet, acyclovir, amphotericin B, vancomycin. Then antineoplastic drugs, you have cisplatin, and then you have contrast agents like iodine-containing contrast agents. Then this is the antifreeze ethylene glycol, which is used in the car radiators. This is also typically causes ATN. Then you have anesthetic induced enfluron. These are the certain drugs which can cause nephrotoxicity through acute tubular necrosis. So the vascular causes of the large vessels can be due to renal artery stenosis or thrombosis or embolism, and that can be operative even while arterial cross clamping, or even during the hysterectomy or some other surgery, or because of the pilot renal vein thrombosis, which is not very common, but this can lead to sudden or acute decrease in the renal output, and leading to acute kidney injury. Then disease of the glomeruli or renal microvasculature, you have this all glomerulonephritis, all types of glomerulonephritis, and the vasculitis, and you have hemolytic uremic syndrome, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, where you have hemolytic where you have thrombocytopenia, where you have microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, and the depositions of those RBCs or disrupted cells in the glomeruli and in renal microvasculatures. There is a formation of microthrombi in the renal vasculatures, and then you have DIC and toxemia of pregnancy, where again there will be deposition of the microthrombi in the renal microvasculatures. So the acute interstitial nephritis, again this is very common due to drug hypersensitivity or infection associated interstitials, where the interstitium of the renal the kidneys are affected, and most common antibiotics are the beta-lactam antibiotics, rifampicin, sulfonamides, erythromycin, or even ciprofloxazoles. Diuretics, you have furosemide, thiazides, and chlorthalidone, and NSAIDs, then anticonvulsants, especially the phenytoin and carbamazepine, allopurinol. These are antibiotic or the drug-related acute interstitial nephritis, and the infection associated are the bacterials, viral, tuberculosis, and fungal. So causes of post-renal AKI is, as the name suggests, you can have a urethral obstruction, you can have a kidney stone or urethral obstruction due to urethral valve, and there will be a bladder neck obstruction, and can be intra-urethral or extra-urethral. And bladder neck, the most common is BPH, which is the most common for the post-renal AKI in the adults in more than 50 years of age, and other can be prostatic cancer. So basically the pathophysiology, if we can again look back in the pre-renal or ischemic intrinsic AKI, where there is a decrease in effective circulatory volume and activation of the vasoreceptor, there is there is a compensatory increase in the angiotensin II, norepinephrine, or antidiuretic hormone, leading to vasoconstriction of the non-essential vascular beds, especially these splanchnic vessels, and in order to maintain the renal blood flow, so there will be a constriction of the efferent arterioles and prostaglandin synthesis and autoregulation, as we saw. And if the hypertension persists and if it's overwhelmed the renal autoregulatory defense mechanism, there can be an ischemia ensuing, and ischemia leading to injury to the renal parenchyma. And as you know, these are medullary congestion. The renal medulla is very, very prone to hypoxic injury, as the blood flow is against the oxygen flow. So this is the one place where it can lead to persistent medullary ischemia, leading to reduction in GFR, and tubular epithelial injury can lead to tubular, as well as because of the tubular obstruction, and if there can be a recovery or regeneration of tubular epithelium, and then there will be a recovery of GFR, and if the incapacitating mechanism is overwhelms the regenerative and the recovery mechanism, then will be leading to AKI. So even you have to remember there are two kind of AKI. There can be oliguric or non-oliguric AKI, especially the non-oliguric AKI in hospital setup, especially when secondary nephrotoxic agents. And very importantly, the patient won't suffer from decrease in renal output in these cases in the non-oliguric AKI, and they have a better prognosis than the oliguric one, and a better recovery than the oliguric one. And as you can see, the ICU non-ICU AKI usually have a kidney as a only failed organ, and mortality rate can be as less as up to 10%. But in ICU AKI, since it's a part of a multi-organ system failure, mortality rates can be over 50%. So clinical features in pre-renal AKI, as the cause suggests, there will be excessive fluid loss from vomiting or diarrhea, or compromised cardiac function, or liver cirrhosis, or liver failure, or drug induced. So all those symptoms that increase thirst or decrease urine output, muscle cramps, postural hypotension or dizziness, and fatigue will set in. And physical finding, you'll see the reduction in ECF if there is because of the decrease in ECF, hypovolemia. You can have a tachycardia, orthostatic hypotension, dry mucus, or decrease in skin turgor, or absence of axillary sweat. And if jugular venous pressure not visible, and if there will be underfilling, artery underfilling due to the expanded extracellular fluid, then you will have elevated JVP, which is different from what will happen in the reduction in ECF, and will be ascites, peripheral edema, or CH, leading to pulmonary crackles and S3 gallop. And liver failure can be identified by jaundice, palmarythma, spider angiomas, and decreased liver size. And again, the cause for the intrinsic or internal AKI, you have to rule out, you have to really take a proper history as far as the nephrotoxic agents are used, or current medication, because this is one issue which is not properly addressed, because invariably they will find so many patients with the history of taking certain painkillers or nephrotoxic drugs on an required basis, and they won't even be very upfront with the history as far as possible. So you have to have a very detailed history as if you want to elicit anything related to nephrotoxic agent or exposure to nephrotoxic agents in such patients. Then a glomerular disease, you will have nephrotic or nephritic syndrome. You can have where you will have hematuria or edema and hypertension. And again, the tubular ATN should be suspected in any patient after period of hypotension, or secondary to cardiac arrest, or hemorrhage, or sepsis, or even in cases like malignancy where you have tumor lysis syndrome. So the physical finding can be a peripheral edema, or facial puffiness, or raised JVP, or pulmonary rails, or signs of uremia like gastroexis, myoclonus, or pericardial rub. Usually the edema which sets in the kidney injury can be generalized, or can be just a facial puffiness in the pedal edema. So it can have a variable of presentation. So post-renal, usually mostly the elderly patient with prostatic obstruction, who will come to with increase in with the complaint of increase in urine frequency, urgency, and hesitancy. And there are certain patients with the renal stone where they might have a costovertebral angle tenderness, or there might be a pelvic or rectal mass, which leading to extra ureter because of the pressure on the ureter, or extra ureter due to the mass in the pelvic or rectal mass, leading to post-renal obstruction. And there can be a prostatic hypertrophy, even prostatic cancer, or distended bladder, or a bladder stone also can lead to post-renal obstruction or post-renal failure. So you have to differentiate from the pre-renal or ATN we'll talk about it and the other lab test and investigation, then treatment in the next class. So this is all for the AKI till now. So basically, this is a very important topic as far as the acute kidney injury, especially the classification and the causes and the pathology. And the next class will take up the how to differentiate different types of renal, pre-renal, or post-renal causes of AKI, and also we'll try to make a plan of our treatment modality. So very importantly, the AKI is a very complex and not very easy thing to address. It's very common and very rampant in our institutional setting. So you have to be very particular with such patients, because the recovery rate is very good as far as AKI is concerned, and people landing them into the CKD can be easily preventable if you can address or you can address this problem as early as possible. So any question if you have, please let me know. Even related to the dengue class in the last lecture, you can let me know if you have any query related to AKI or dengue. Any question related to this topic or any of the previous topics? So fine, I think we should call it a day, and we'll take up the latter part of the AKI in the next lecture. Thank you so much, class.